Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to another edition of Talk Back. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me as always is Justin Gay, your host and director of content. He's got a strong lineup for you this week. Not only do we have to close out March Madness and discuss the Final Four and the top two deciding the national championship in men's basketball, but huge news out of the NBA that took a lot of people by surprise. Then over in the NFL, now there's not a lot going on, and yet Antonio Brown still needs to be a part of the story. We'll hit up on that, and then we'll close the show with PGA Tour. Yes, the Masters, the first major of the season, is upon us. Tiger's in good form, but not only that, Jordan Spieth appears to be making a little bit of a comeback in his own putting game, so there's going to be lots to discuss when it comes to the green jacket, who we think might take home the championship in 2019. We've got all of that for you and more right here on episode 242 of Talk Back.
Well, it's not too often that the first number one seed that got knocked out by a 16 seed that comes back the next year to win the title actually is going to get bumped to segment two. But that's what happens when one of the most preeminent names in the NBA, the president of the Los Angeles Lakers, holds an impromptu press conference before the Lakers' final home game and announces that he's stepping down when, in a world today where it seems like, Eric, everything breaks on Twitter and people go through tireless steps to keep stuff from breaking, and it seems like it happens all the time where stuff gets leaked out, i.e. see the Anthony Davis whole debacle that happened where everything got leaked. And here's Magic Johnson, who steps down, and no one knew it was happening even after a 3-hour meeting prior to that with Jeannie Buss. So, Eric, I was shocked to see this come down, because one of the stories I wanted to talk about on this show before this happened was the fact that this is such an important offseason for not only the Lakers, but for LeBron James, and the fact that this Lakers team needs a roster makeover, and it looks like they may need a new head coach as well. But when you saw this news come down and just blow up on Twitter on Tuesday evening, what were your thoughts?
Well, I had a couple of thoughts, and one of them is the fact that Magic Johnson met with Rich Paul, Clutch obviously being represented there by Rich Paul, LeBron James, and general manager Pelinka. And so you kind of had the sense that maybe this didn't sit well with Magic Johnson, or at least I'm kind of interjecting that there's some possibility that there's some things that didn't sit well with him, because from all accounts, that meeting went well. And then he surprises LeBron and Pelinka and even Jeannie Buss that he's leaving just a couple of days after that. And it goes to make you wonder if LeBron James, Rich Paul, if they had a direction for the team, maybe even Pelinka agreeing with them, that Magic Johnson just wasn't comfortable with. One of those things might be that they wanted Luke Walton gone. Magic said some things in that impromptu sort of, I wouldn't call it a press conference, but that interview before the game the other night. And it led you to believe that maybe some tough decisions had to be made in the near future that he just wasn't willing to make. And he kind of gave you that sense that he just wasn't having fun anymore. And he even said as much, I'm not having fun anymore. I'd like to kind of be Magic Johnson and enjoy the game outside of being president of basketball operations. And I just feel that LeBron James, potentially pressure from Clutch, have this organization moving in a direction that they want Walton gone. They want some big changes made to the roster. They want some tough things done over the next 2 to 3 years. And Magic just says, you know what? I've got to wipe my hands of this. So Justin, yes, I was very surprised. I didn't see this type of thing coming. We knew that this organization as a whole was in a bit of a disarray. We knew that this summer was going to be a big off season for them, but I didn't see it happening like this. And I just think that part of this is LeBron's fault. And I think that this whole situation has Magic walking away from something that he probably didn't intend to walk away from. I actually watched the Sixers game with the Heat late on Tuesday night, and in the post game, Shaquille O'Neal was interviewed about what he thought about this whole thing. And of course, Shaq has some ties to the Lakers, being that he's a champion there. And he's friends with Magic Johnson. And he was very surprised by this, saying even things like, I can't really picture Magic Johnson walking away from something like this unless something is going on behind the scenes. So Justin, I don't think we know the full story yet. And I think there's going to be a lot more written and said about this.
Yeah, the first thing I had written on my notes was, were the expectations too high with LeBron? Look at some of the things that have been said of recent about this roster. Well, why was this roster constructed the way it was? You know, why is Magic out there saying he didn't value shooting and he valued toughness because that's what wins in the playoffs? Magic starts taking a lot of heat from various writers and different reporters and different TV analysts on the way that this roster was constructed. And I think for him, I don't think he was having fun, Eric. It just seemed like the pressure was so high that it's almost one of those things like, be careful what you wish for, because everybody thought that, oh, if LeBron goes to the Lakers, there's no doubt that this is going to be a playoff team, and eventually this team's a high likelihood that they're going to win a title. Well, now there's cracks all through this team. You haven't been able to get a second star in. Paul George didn't even give you an interview, and you start to look at the free agent class this summer of who's even going to be available. If a guy like Durant heads to New York, Kyrie, we have no idea what is going to happen. If he resigns with Boston, they have a much better package to offer for AD. So even if AD wants to go to the Lakers, that's another year off on LeBron. You're going to be getting LeBron at what, 35, 36? What does he have left at that point? You've got a mess with your roster at this point. You're going to have to go out and do a search for a head coach. He's going to have to spend a lot of time getting prepped for the draft. It doesn't seem like from a lot of reports that he wants to go out and do all of that grind type work every day, traveling and going overseas and connecting with all these coaches and doing that kind of stuff. It seemed like he just kind of liked to pop in, be a face, kind of be more of an ambassador for the Lakers and not have this role of doing this grind work every single day that a lot of other GMs are doing. So I just think that what the Lakers and Magic thought was going to happen was completely different. And this year, it was a lost year for this team, and everything that could have went wrong did. And he even talked about it in that presser he did, talking about the backstabbing and all the back channel stuff that goes on and not really liking that. And you sort of wonder, to your point, after that meeting with Rich Paul and LeBron, you have to wonder what was brought up, what was said, what guy would they go after, or were they pushing for? Draymond Green is a clutch guy. Is that something that they were pushing for behind the scenes? Is it still something with AD? Was there something that came up in that meeting, like you said, was like, hey, you know what? I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to go through another season. If we have another season of losing, it's going to be another year where if I don't get another superstar, I'm going to be the one that's going to be taking the heat for this roster. And for a guy like Magic, who's making most of his money off of everything but the Lakers at this point, all his other business interests, he's got interest in the Dodgers. Maybe at this point, it's just better to sort of step away from this mess and come back in a few years and be more of that ambassador type role where he's just showing up at home games and shaking hands and kissing babies and doing that stuff versus making day-to-day decisions. Because, Eric, I don't think anybody in purple and gold had any type of fun this year.
No, and that's a very good point. They didn't have much fun. There was a lot of disarray, as I said, after that whole trade talk. I think you see a lot of guys that feel like they're undervalued or not important. I think that led to a lot of less than motivated players, let's say, as we carried on through the year.
Yeah,
I think that could have hurt friendships. I think it could have hurt chemistry in the locker room. I mean, I know it did. And so my question here, Justin, is where do you go from here? It sounds like Pelinka is going to stay. Now you have him probably feeling ultimate pressure from LeBron and Clutch and Rich Paul. Okay, if you're going to stay, you know what we want. I don't see Walton staying there. I think then you get one of those quote unquote players coaches, and there's names on a list I think that is circulating around between some of these talking heads in the sports world of guys that maybe LeBron would like to play for. And they're not head coaches that would maybe work everywhere, but they're head coaches that would be popular and work for a guy like LeBron, who the coach is willing to take a little bit of a back seat. So I think you're going to see a new head coach. But Justin, then what do you do with the roster? I think you talked about it with the free agency. We got to see who comes in. But I really don't know where this thing goes for the Lakers, because as we've talked about the past few weeks, this is boom or bust time for LeBron. This is the twilight of his career. I think it's going to be critical that they pick up a couple of free agents. And I'm not talking about bringing in like Boogie Cousins and Kemba Walker. To me, as a LeBron fan, that doesn't move the needle. Look, I couldn't care less about the Lakers, whether or not they win more championships. I'm going to root for LeBron. But I don't think Boogie and Kemba are really going to do it. I think you get a guy like Klay Thompson who can shoot the ball, and that makes a big difference for LeBron. You get a guy like Kyrie who maybe there's chemistry there and maybe they figured out how to work together again. That might move the needle. I don't know about AD. I'd certainly take him as a partner with LeBron, but I'm not convinced that is just the magic solution to winning a title. Justin, for you, what do you think needs to happen? I mean, how much of a blow up does this need to be for them to circle the wagons back around a championship run over the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, they've got to go find a GM, and maybe it's a guy like a David Griffin that has some history with LeBron, that sort of knows what to build around LeBron. Maybe that's a direction that they go. There's a lot of names getting thrown out, and they're all big names. Sam Presti, Bob Myers, all these GMs that are already on winning teams. But you started wondering, why would these guys just go to the Lakers? Again, it's the same aspect we talk about with other stars, maybe not wanting to play with LeBron, because if the team wins, LeBron gets all the credit. And if they underperform and lose, you get all the blame as either a player or the general manager. You didn't put enough around LeBron. You didn't do enough job getting shooting. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. So I think for GMs, they have to look at that as well. A guy like Sam Presti, he just got Paul George to sign in Oklahoma City. He's got Westbrook there. Why exactly would he leave, especially fast forwarding to this summer when the Warriors may not look like the same Warriors team, depending on what happens? So I think, first of all, they have to sort of reset their expectations. Maybe they don't need to go get a main guy. Maybe they just need a guy that's young and hungry. Did anybody know the name Bob Myers before they were able to draft Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and start building that? No. Same thing with Daryl Morey. Nobody really heard of him until he was able to pull off the Harden trade and reset the Rockets roster. So R.C. Buford the same way with the Spurs. Nobody knew that name before they became the Spurs, and they got Duncan on that team and built around him. Maybe they just need to go find a younger guy that's just willing to put in the time and really grind out this roster for this team. And look, LeBron has to stay out of this. He just can't always bring in his people and who he wants to coach. They've got to go find the best people, and he has to just sort of accept that. He didn't even want to accept maybe the best coach he's had in Eric Spoelstra. And finally, when someone said, no, that's not what's best for your career, that's not what's best for this organization, and he got 2 titles out of it. So I think at that point, the Lakers definitely have to get that set with this team. We'll see how the draft works out. And then, like you said, the free agency this summer, I mean, that's going to be the story. It's going to be a talking point for us and for the media. It's going to be a 2 to 3 week content, because it's just going to keep coming out. Stuff's going to keep getting leaked. You know, does Kawhi, does he go to the Clippers? Does he stay in Toronto? What's KD going to do? Is Kemba going to end up third team all NBA, where he's going to be available for the Supermax, and a Charlotte can offer him $220 million, where the Lakers aren't going to be able to offer that? And you start looking at a guy like Kemba, who's not going to be big and making a ton of money off endorsements. Does he want to stay in Charlotte, or does he want to win? And can he win in LA? That's what he's got to decide, going to the West from the East. So there's a lot out there, but talking about even a guy like Klay Thompson seems like the perfect fit. But you look at his personality, Eric, he just doesn't seem like a guy that wants to be around all the drama. He seems to sort of separate himself when Draymond's going crazy and him and KD are fighting and Boogie Cousins is getting thrown out. Like, that doesn't seem to be Klay. So you have to wonder, does he really want to go to LA and get involved in this circus when he can stay and probably sign a max deal with Golden State, move into a new arena? Regardless of what happens, they'll still have Steph and Klay to build around. And with that kind of shooting, you can build a lot around them. There's different pieces that they can plug in and still, I think, be successful. So I think there's a lot of, obviously there is a ton of questions on this team, but the Lakers have to figure out some direction. And maybe it's just not names. Maybe this whole thing, we saw it with the Knicks. Phil Jackson did not work out for that team. And the Lakers followed the same blueprint and bring Magic in. Like maybe these guys just that have a ton of money